On today's show, we are joined by Ben Strober from the Maryland Baseball Radio Network and also 1067 The Fan. And today we're going to be tackling James Wood and his big 2025 season ahead, and also take a look at some of the spring training numbers that James Wood has produced so far. We'll have all of that and more after this.
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, I'm your host, Ryan Clary. You can catch me over on Twitter at RyanClary11 and catch out our show page at LO_Nationals for all your latest Nationals news and notes. Make sure to check us out over on Twitter. And of course, while you're at it, search up Locked On Nationals wherever you get your pods, whether it's on Apple, Spotify, and of course, the video version of this said podcast. You can check that out over on YouTube and just search Locked On Nationals and hit that subscriber button, please. Later on in the show today, Ben Strober and I will be tackling the MASN future. Like, what is going to happen? I want his thoughts first and foremost. He has grown up in this area just like I have. He has watched the Nationals basically 162 games since Ben was a small boy, just like myself. So we'll discuss that a little bit later on in the second segment. Just getting into some prospect talk this year. This is kind of what spring training is about for a rebuilding ball club, seeing the young guys and seeing what they can do. But of course, as we were saying, we are joined by Ben Strober from the Maryland Baseball Radio Network. First and foremost, did I get that right, Ben? It's the Maryland Baseball Radio Network, or is it just the Maryland Sports Network?
It's the Maryland Baseball Network. Is the official name of our student radio network. Serves as the flagship station for the Maryland baseball team. It's been that way since 2017 when some guys that are actually currently in the big leagues calling baseball, Jake Eisenberg, the Kansas City Royals radio voice, helped get that thing rolling. So big shout out to him and all the people that came before us that paved the way for a really special thing that we get to do as students.
Yeah, no, it's awesome, man. And I've gotten to listen to some of your calls. And in fact, yesterday, you were at the Fredericksburg National Stadium calling the Virginia-Maryland game, and it was a wild one. We talked about it before the show. I got to see a little bit last night. And Ben, you're a Maryland guy for all the listeners out there. You called the games for them. That was a tough one.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of tough ones for this Maryland baseball team.
Not a lot of great ones.
If you happen to keep up with the team, they're 8-8 right now, which is pretty surprising considering they brought back pretty much the majority of the team they had last year. And the team last year was good. They were top 30 in RPI. They just really struggled in Big Ten play, dropped a couple series that they probably shouldn't have, did not qualify for the Big Ten tournament, which was the reason they couldn't get an at-large bid. If they had made the Big Ten tournament, they probably would have gotten at-large bid to the NCAA tournament. And this year, it's just been heartbreaker after heartbreaker for that team. I think I can count 5 games where they have stormed back late in the game, tied it in the 8th or 9th inning, and the back end of the bullpen has just really struggled. Same result yesterday, down 6-3 in the top of the 9th inning. Mm-hmm. They rallied back, scored 3 runs in the top of the 9th. The game-tying run came in on a wild pitch, and then Maryland, in turn, walked it off for Virginia on a wild pitch of its own. So it giveth and it taketh away. But it was an awesome scene in Fredericksburg yesterday. 4,000 people showed up to Virginia Credit Union Stadium, which is just a fantastic minor league ballpark. I was so impressed for my first time being there. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, and again, you mentioned the Fredericksburg Nationals there. Like, for those who don't know, the Virginia Credit Union Stadium is where the Fred Nats play, the Nationals' low A affiliate. And we'll talk about some prospects who have been on that field and who will be on that field this year a little bit later on in the show today with Ben. But of course, Ben, you know, we could talk Maryland and Virginia baseball all day here, but we got to talk some Nationals, man. And right now, the college season has started, but also spring training is here. And James Wood, man, James Wood just feels as if he is the next superstar approaching for your Washington Nationals. And Ben, I just have this feeling that the time is now for James Wood. Like, I think James Wood is going to be a stud this year offensively. Defense, it's going to need some work out in left field, but I am all in on James Wood after seeing what he has done so far in spring training. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. James is a transcending talent that's been that way really for a long time. Not to go back toward Maryland baseball here, but yesterday when we're in that Fred Nats Stadium, that's where James began his Nats career after the trade from San Diego. One of the players on Maryland, Braden Martin, he's a sophomore. He went to St. John's, was there momentarily with James before he transferred to the IMG Academy. And I asked him, I said, did you ever come to this ballpark to see James play? And he said, yeah, I actually came here a couple times. We all showed out to see James play, and he dominated at that level, and he dominated his way through the minor leagues. There was that point last year before he got called up where it almost felt like it was getting ridiculous how he was carrying the cover off the baseball at AAA, and he still hadn't made his way up to the big league roster until July 1st. But we saw a lot of flashes out of him last year. His ability to take the ball the other way, his ability to show a really good eye at the plate, OPS almost around 800 through that brief stint last year. And in spring training, he's pretty much picked up exactly where he left off. Still haven't seen him pull the ball for a home run, which I know every Nats fan has begged him to do. He only did it a handful of times last year through his home runs. But that one home run he hit, I think it was his first one of the spring, a screamer that he took the other way. Mm-hmm. Charlie Slows, one of the best baseball radio voices maybe ever, in my opinion. That ball was hit on such a low line that even he couldn't believe that it got out of the ballpark. And that's kind of the way it's been when you see a guy like that who has such raw power taking it to the opposite field. It's special. We haven't seen anything like that since Juan Soto was here, the ability to hit for power to the opposite field. I'd love to see him pull the ball a little bit more. I'm wondering if that's going to be something that we see develop throughout this year. But I think the hit tools are obviously there. And you bring up the work that he can, bring defensively, how he needs to improve a little bit in left field. I think that's something he's going to get better at with time. I don't think the outfield for the Nationals is a problem at all. You have some really good outfielders out there. Presumably, you're going to have Dylan Cruz playing in right field this year. I know that's a bit of a debate with Nationals fans right now, if it's worth it to just have Dylan Cruz playing in right instead of center. But you have Jacob Young playing in center field, who arguably should have been a Gold Glove center fielder last year. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the outfield shapes up. But the development of James Wood out there is going to be a really important aspect of the Nats games this year.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, you said it best there. And James Wood, I've talked a lot about CJ Abrams this offseason, and Davey Martinez has even gone as far to say basically I'm just kind of paraphrasing what Davey said, but CJ Abrams is going to be the straw that stirs this drink for the Washington Nationals in 2025. But James Wood is a superstar, man. This is all about James Wood right now. He has the potential to put your team on the back and just ride them into October baseball. Now, I don't think that's going to happen this year because I don't think James Wood has enough help around him at this point in time, but you can certainly see why the Nationals are very high on him. You can understand why he was the number one prospect in all of baseball entering this past season. And James Wood is here, man. And you brought this up, and this is actually where I was going to go. So you're a smart guy here, Ben. But Nationals fans, this has been my one gripe, with James Wood and all the talk around him. People have discussed, James Wood doesn't pull the baseball. Why does he only go the other way? And it's this is such a small, not even a problem, because it's not a problem. I don't understand why people are so upset about this 21-year-old kid last year who would not pull the baseball and only hit opposite field home runs, which he hit basically 9 opposite field home runs last year. I believe he had 1 that went into the right field bleachers, and that's about it. My one thing with Nationals fans that I have been pleading since James Wood got called up was oh my God, the fact that this guy is going the opposite way is the biggest green flag ever. Juan Soto did that. And I'm not saying he's going to be Juan Soto. That is an unfair comparison. But James Wood, man, This guy has opposite field power, and the pull side power is definitely going to come once he kind of catches up to big league pitching, and that'll probably come at some point this season, and you will see 440-foot moonshots going to right field. And it's just been one of my gripes with Nationals fans. I've seen so much talk about it. I've seen so many people say this is a bad thing that he's going the other way, and I'm like, no, it's not. It's quite literally a great thing that he is showing opposite field power right away. It just shows you that he's got the contact ability, number one, but also number two, he's got the power going to left field, man, as a lefty hitter. He's been ultra impressive so far, so I'm glad you brought that up, man.
I'll say one of the more underrated things that people don't talk about with James Wood is how fast he is, the impact he can have on a baseball game on the base paths. Got on base at a 354 clip in his rookie season. I expect that to get better. I think he's a guy, given how good his eye is at the plate, how good he is as a hitter, he could be a guy that gets on base at around 400. He stole 14 bags this year in a pretty limited sample size. I think he's a guy in a full year easily steals 30 bases for this Nationals team.
Wow.
Davey Martinez was very aggressive last year in the base paths. It worked out really well for them, especially in the first half. But if James Wood gets on base the way he did last year, he's going to steal 30 bases. I actually have the hot take that he's going to be a 30 home run, 30 stolen base player this year.
I was going to go there with that. So you're saying he's going to be a 30-30 guy. I mean, it's not that crazy. It's really not that crazy, Ben. Like, I think that is a great, I think it's a fair stat line. Like, this guy's got the power to hit 30 home runs this season. You've seen the power on display in just a few games. He's hit 2 bolts already. He's batting .333. He's getting on base. I mean, again, it's only a few games in spring training here, but you know ball, Ben. You know ball. 30 home runs and 30 stolen bases for the 6'7" freak in left field. I think it absolutely lines up here. And I could see James Wood easily getting to that mark this season. But, we could talk about James Wood all day here, Ben. We do got to talk about some more prospects here. But before we jump into some prospects talk, let's talk about some of my good friends over at Wonderful Pistachios. And of course, looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious, crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. And Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. And plus, they are packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. And personally, I love the no shells variety. I've seen Ben snacking on the Wonderful Pistachios over at work, and it's a perfect grab and go snack for busy days. Whether I'm snacking or maybe Ben is snacking at the desk or at college, you can on a road trip as well. And maybe you need a quick protein boost. They're always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. And the fact that Wonderful Pistachios is a complete protein providing all 9 essential amino acids, it just makes it better. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. And thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. I am joined by Ben Strober from the Maryland Radio Network, and he is on the call for Maryland Baseball. I've seen him on the call for Big Ten Network as well, and I worked over at 106.7 The Fan, so the guy is busy in his senior year of school at the University of Maryland. But Ben, we have talked a lot off the air about the Nationals. I mean, day one, we were talking Nats, getting a little nerdy about baseball, so I was like, all right, got to talk to this guy about some prospects. And of course, when you talk about prospects in spring training, you got to bring up Robert Hassell III, man. What do you make so far of his hot spring training start?
He's been excellent, and this kind of reminds me of what we saw with James Wood last spring. I think through the first 19 at-bats James Wood had in the spring, he had 11 or 12 hits or something ridiculous like that. And Hassell has been the hot bat for this Nationals team in spring training, and it sparks debates amongst fans because so many people want to see a guy like Robert Hassell that's been within the system now for a couple years since the Juan Soto trade. I don't know if he's a guy that's going to crack this opening day roster. In fact, I probably think he does start in AAA, very similar to the way James Wood did last year. But he is making it very tough. A guy and is hitting around over 300 in spring training and has just barreled the baseball. Bobby Barrels is this nickname for a good reason.
It's an awesome nickname, by the way.
He flashed the leather really well out there for this Nationals defensively, which makes it all that much more harder. I mean, you have so much talent outfield-wise between Wood, Cruz, and Jacob Young. Really, Wood is the weakest link when it comes to the outfield for this Nationals squad. But so many Nats fans are, not as keen on a guy like Jacob Young being out in the lineup because they don't think his hit tool is as good as a guy like Robert Hassell. But I think Hassell is going to need a little bit more time. I think he starts the year in AAA, kind of like we saw with James Wood, but we'll see him pretty shortly at some point this year. And I think he's going to provide a pretty good impact to this team when he does make his way to the majors.
Yeah, you know what? Like, I'm bought in on Robert Hassell as well at this point. Like, again, looking back at that trade with the Juan Soto deal, it was obviously the headlining name was James Wood. I don't really think many people knew that at that point, but James Wood was like the number one guy in that deal. He was soaring up, just prospect boards. Some people were already ranking him inside the top 10 at that point. But right behind him, and literally right behind him in those prospect rankings, was Robert Hassell III. He's been injured these past few seasons and unfortunately just has not put up the great numbers. But he is still 23 years old, man. Like, this kid is still pretty damn young as far as baseball terms go. And he has been the talk around town at this point. And you mentioned the outfield right now. Like, it is hard to replace Jacob Young in center field defensively. Like, he was very good, a Gold Glove caliber. And I think you said it there, and I agree with it. Like, he should have been the Gold Glover in center field. You got Dylan Cruz in right field, who is going to be the future there in right or maybe in center. Who knows at this point? And then you got James Wood, who probably needs a little work defensively in left field, but down in the minors when he was playing in right or in center, he was really good defensively. So I feel as if he'll eventually adjust there in left. But you said it, man. Like, it's a crowded outfield. But do you think, because I'm not going to lie, I've been the one that has been frustrated with Jacob Young at this point. Like, Jacob Young is great defensively, and you need a great defensive center fielder. Let's say he's not just getting it done at the plate. Let's say that he kind of has a similar stat line to this past season, offensively speaking, and Robert Hassell is killing it down in AAA. Do you think Davey Martinez and Mike Rizzo would make the call to Robert Hassell to have him be your everyday center fielder to replace Jacob Young if by this midseason point he is just not getting it done offensively? Could you see that happening in 2025?
I think I can see it happening. It just depends when. I think if we get to around the summertime, kind of similar to what we saw with James, I'm not sure if Hassell, if there's manipulation to, the service time, that's going to be part of that whole ordeal. I think that was kind of part of what was going on with James Wood last year. Of course, they'll never officially say that, and I'm not aware, so I'm not going to make the assumption that there's anything similar going on with Hassell in this situation. But I think if they get to around June, July, if Young is struggling at the plate, if he's not getting on base, that's a problem. Because even if Young isn't a guy that's going to hit 285 or better in the league, if he can get on base, he's got great speed. He can serve as a second leadoff hitter, as a guy that just gets on base, steals bags for you before you have your leadoff hitter, C.J. Abrams, coming up at that point, if that is indeed the lineup. But if you can't get on base, that is a big problem, and you might have to consider moving on at some point. It's also going to depend on how competitive this team is at that point. If they're in a competitive spot around the summertime and Young can't get it done at the plate, I'd love to see Hassell if he's still killing it in AAA.
Yeah, I would love to see Robert Hassell as well at this point. Like, I remember back in 2022 when we first made that deal, like, I was like, oh, well, Robert Hassell, he's going to be up in the beginning of 2023, if not get a cup of coffee in 2022. And we all know what happened there. Had a couple injuries and just some setbacks. And it was an unfortunate time for him. But I think right now, like, he is healthy. He is still young. And you're seeing what he can do on when he is 100% healthy. And this guy is a difference maker, man. Like, it is an exciting time to be the Nationals. It is an exciting time for Robert Hassell because he knows he is healthy. And I think right now he has probably been the biggest name prospect up to this point that has really just kind of been breaking out onto the scene for the Nationals. Like, he has been better than Brady House, and Brady House is only 21 at this point. We all know the abilities that he has, and he'll be up at some point this year as well.
Yeah.
But Robert Hassell, man, like, he is in that interesting conversation because Alex Call the other day got pulled out of the game. I believe it was yesterday or 2 days ago when he was pulled out, had a little injury. We don't really know how serious it is at this point, but I would think that Alex Call would be your fourth outfielder. And I don't think the Nationals will make Robert Hassell their fourth outfielder at this point, just because I think they would like to have him get some reps down in AAA. And I feel as if they still view him as an everyday player. And I think the Nationals have their full intent in him being an everyday player at this point. So it's an interesting discussion, though. It really is. But Ben, we do talk about prospects here, but I do want to get your thoughts on the Mid-Atlantic Sports Network. And MASN is no more after 2025. So I want to see what you think about that after we tell everybody about my good friends over at Supply House, and get the supplies that you need from the site made for the skilled trades at supplyhouse.com. And whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online, and their easy to use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. And you need help with an order, Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. So join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code ACE, SH5 for 5% off your first order. That is supplyhouse.com. And now we get back into it with Ben Strober. You can find him at the Maryland Radio Network calling baseball games for the Terps there. You can catch him on the Big Ten Network calling lacrosse games, and I'm assuming maybe baseball games as well, Ben.
Yeah,
I don't know.
fun.
Yeah, you got some baseball games on the Big Ten Network also. And you can also catch him on 106.7 The Fan, one of our new producers there at the station, who is doing just fine, I would say, for his first few months at this radio station. But Ben, MASN, man, it's no more after 2025. What were your thoughts on that big news last week?
I'll tell you, I was in the elevator. I just got back from the gym, and I got a text from someone in a group chat that said, "Congrats, Strober." And I was like, what? What did I do? And I saw that there was actually an article linked to it that says Nationals and Orioles to end broadcast dispute after 2025 season. And I was like, yes. Oh my gosh, finally. Like, this is the best day of my whole life. And the most frustrating thing my whole life really about this MASN dispute is that so many Nationals fans, Orioles fans, just have no understanding, I should say, of what this MASN deal was, what it meant for both ball clubs. This was such a hindrance on the Nationals for all these years, and I couldn't stand it. I couldn't believe the things I would see, the headlines that would come out about withholdings of over $100 million between the Nationals and Orioles battling in court for over a decade, over $100 million because of broadcast revenue. And it hurt because Washington, D.C. is one of the biggest markets. It's, I believe, a top 5 or 6 market in the entire country, yet the Nationals are essentially operating like a small market team because they don't have adequate access to their broadcast revenue. Big cities like Los Angeles, New York, those teams make so much money off those TV deals, and the Nationals aren't able to experience those same benefits. And it's just such a hindrance. It prevented the sale of this team for the Lerner family for many years. I'm not sure if the end of this deal means that we might see Ted Leonsis or someone else swoop in and buy this team eventually at some point. I think there's a strong possibility that something like that does happen. given that this MASN deal is finally off the table for being part of the sale. But this is huge. Finally, that news breaks. You see the Nationals say they're going to start exploring selling the naming rights of Nationals Park, jersey sponsorship that could add up to $20 million per year in revenue. And it's just unbelievable that these things couldn't happen for so long. A 20-year dispute between the Nationals and Orioles can finally come to an end, and it can finally pave the way for the Nationals to maybe make some more money, pay some more players, finally get guys like James Wood and Dylan Cruz to sign big extensions or big second contracts with this team. We haven't seen that in so long, and the MASN deal was a huge reason why. This team just could not make an adequate amount of money in revenue, and any money that it actually was making would usually get tied up in some big court case with the Orioles. It was unbelievably frustrating, not only for the organization, but for the fans that were following along with it.
Yeah, like again, Ben, like you're like me, you grew up in this era, you grew up watching Nationals game. All we have known is MASN. And while it was once a good product, like, when we're kids watching Bob Carpenter and FP Santangelo on the call, like we never really knew what was happening behind the scenes. And it really became a big story in like the early to mid 2010s of MASN and just kind of the debacle that it was with the TV revenue and the revenue sharing overall. And the Nationals are coming out of this pretty clean, man. And it is unbelievable because I thought, like, I'd given up even talking about this. Number one, like, it was just too much to talk about. Like, I don't know what was going on. Basically, from what I understood, was that the Orioles, like, they would get denied in one court and they just take it up another level and another level. And it was just an ongoing process that would never end. And I think with their new owner, David Rubenstein, and kind of the way that the RSNs are just going out of business at this point, like, it was a stunning move, honestly. Like, I was completely stunned. No one saw that coming at this point in time. But you mentioned it with the Lerners. Like, I could see the Lerners still owning this team moving forward. Like, I think it makes sense. But I could also see a like minority partnership here. And as you know, the obvious connection here is Ted Leonsis. And from my understanding, it says on the Lerners website that they are actually minority owners in the Monumental Sports Network. So it feels as if it's going to be a pretty easy transition for them to go over to Monumental Sports. And I think that'll be a great partnership because, Monumental Sports does really good coverage of the Caps and in the Wizards. And just adding a third team, that's going to generate extra revenue for Monumental Sports. It's going to put some more money into the Caps, the Nats, and the Wizards and all the broadcasts surrounding that. And having a prime location for all three of these major teams here in town outside of the Commanders, like, that's going to be huge. So I think, like, is it safe to say, Ben, that it's going to go to Monumental Sports and that'll be over with for the next few seasons?
I wouldn't say it's definitive, but it almost feels inevitable.
Yeah.
And it's really felt that way for years. I think what Monumental has done since it shifted over from NBC Sports Washington, Comcast Sportsnet, whatever you may remember it as, it's essentially just become this empire of Washington sports media. It seems like eventually everyone and everything will be on Monumental Sports Network. It has grown into such a large entity that covers so much. I've seen coverage of the Capital City Go-Go on there. HBCU basketball has games. Everything can be on Monumental. The Sports Junkies are on Monumental Sports Network. So that shows the kind of pull that network has, the money that's come in recent years for Monumental. I think it makes a lot of sense to say that there's a very high possibility that the Nationals do end up playing on Monumental. I don't know if that means Ted will eventually become the main owner of this Nationals baseball club. I know it's something that he has explored in the past, even though it was reported he did not make an offer recently. But we'll see if that changes with MASN out of the picture. It's going to be really interesting to follow where this team goes TV-wise. One last thing before we get off this topic, I guess. It almost feels fitting that here in Bob Carpenter's last year calling games for this Nationals team, it will be the last year on MASN. And he announced that. He announced it 2 years ago that he was going to do his final 2 years calling games for the Nationals almost at a part-time basis where Kolko would be calling a lot of the games. He wouldn't travel as much. He wanted to spend more time with his family, which is completely understandable for a guy that's been the voice of this team for so long. A lot of great memories. Bob Carpenter, he's just a true professional. He's been one of the best to do it in the TV baseball business. So well respected. I've got a scorebook. Everyone I know has a scorebook to use it for young broadcasters. It almost feels fitting and poetic in a way that the end of MASN will also be the end of him being the Nationals TV voice.
Yeah, and you said it perfectly there, Ben. Like, I thought about that as well, that it's his final season with the network and with the Nationals. And of course, it is going to be the network's final year with the Nationals as well. Like, I love Bob Carpenter. I mean, just everyone knows the see you later call. I mean, it's awesome. Like, he is an institution here in DC as far as I'm concerned. And I have nothing but great memories with Bob Carpenter. So I think it'll be interesting to see what the Nationals do with him in this final season, how they honor him. Is there going to be like a Bob Carpenter bobblehead day or something like that? Or what are they going to do to just kind of recognize him? I guess we'll just have to see as time goes on. But Ben, always appreciate you hopping on, man. And this will definitely not be our last time as the season goes on.
Yeah, Clary, thanks. Always enjoy hopping on here with you.
Of course, man. And where can everyone find you over on Twitter as well? And where else can they find you?
At Ben Strober Media on Twitter and on Instagram. You can follow me at Strober Sports. That's where I post pretty much exclusively Washington sports content, Maryland sports. So if you want to check that out, you can find me over there on those socials.
You heard Ben. You can check him out over on his Twitter, and you can catch me over on Twitter at RyanClarion11. And for Ben, I'm Ryan. I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Have a good one. Go Nats.